Thank you. Hi, everybody. Please take a moment to park your self-driving cars. Get out of your smart city transportation systems and think about not going from A to B horizontally, but going up. Mobility is not only moving on the surface, but also moving up. And us as a species, we've become much more aware of our planet and of ourselves thanks to air travel and thanks to space travel. So since we're in Germany, let's go back to where it all started. This is one of the first airliners. This is from the 1920s, okay? So from the 1920s, there was a lot of work to innovate. This is a meeting about innovation. And in 30 years, this is how an airliner looked like. That's what you see is 30 years of engineering work, mostly done in Europe. The jet engines, the dirigibles, the intercontinental ballistic missiles that make up the space launchers. You remember that it's a harsh ride to the moon. Why is it a harsh ride to the moon? Yeah, now it's working, sorry. Because you are going on a missile, okay? You know, these missiles were designed here by Wernher von Braun, and all the systems that we have to go to space are just byproducts of those designs. Then, this is 30 years. Okay, 60 years later, that's the best plane we have, the Boeing 787. So, 30 years of innovation, 60 years of innovation. And up on top, you see the case for computers. You see, computers do really have innovated a little bit. So there is a systemic problem in the way we're doing innovation in aerospace. This cannot be. And I won't get into too much detail, but the incentive structure of these entities that have been creating these designs is wrong. If you propose something better, you don't make more money. The way, startups in the digital sector do innovate because if you create something, you become wealthier. That is not the case in this. It hasn't been so far, but it's changing. And we're a small part of that. So this lack of progress is what got me started and why I started Zero to Infinity as a company. And you see the company is not called 0 to 36 kilometers. It's called 0 to Infinity, all right? So, but we got to go step by step. So this is, this is from where I studied, from my alma mater. And this is another graduate, he's Buzz Aldrin, and he's really upset that, he was promised Mars colonies and he got, Facebook. Like, there is another firm in Silicon Valley that says we were promised flying cars and we got 140 characters. So there's certainly something wrong. But I want to share with you a little bit why I think that hasn't happened. And maybe we were looking at the wrong place to look for these flying cars. And we were not really doing things in the right way. So now, after this introduction, I want to tell you how we're a little grain of sand that from 0 to infinity we're putting to change a little bit this industry. First, I want to talk to you about space, because we all hear about it, but, we don't really know. We're not very familiar. We don't go to space that often. So an airplane flies around 11 kilometers. So Concorde is around 18 or so. Of course, that's been retired. And a high-altitude balloon, just like the one that Felix Baumgartner, the Austrian guy, used to go to the edge of space and skydive, typically flies around 40. And up there, you already see like the same thing that astronauts see. For instance, there is some water on the moon, but there is a lot more water on the poles of Mars. And that water was detected by a scientist from France that went up on a high-altitude balloon with his instruments and detected water. He was a guy I knew, but he passed away already. So then you can go to the space station, which is around 400, 350 or so. It's not very far. It's not very far. So we don't do a really good job, to go at high altitude. So one of the projects that we have in the company is called Bloom. It's a way for you and astronauts as well, professionals and civilians, anybody, to experience what astronauts see, to see the Earth as a blue planet with a black starry sky day and night. So Felix, if you can put the video of the test flight, it's not the video, it's the Chrome page. This one, yeah. So spin around. It's a spherical video, so you can look around. Let's see. Oh, there's the balloon. You see? So this is not a promise. This is happening. So look down, so we can see the prototype. Looks like a donut. The final version will seat 4 passengers and 2 pilots. These passengers can be either tourists or professionals training. We spend millions of dollars or euros spent training astronauts, and they could train in an environment that is a lot more like the environment they're going to face in space. And a lot of the science, you see the shadow? So we just took off. Let's scroll to the, say, minute 33 or so. There you go. That's a good place, yeah. So look for the sun in the horizon. You can spin it around. There you go. That's the view. This is how a planet looks like. Seeing this is transformative. If you get the elites of the world to see this, because of course, I say the elites because they are the ones that can afford it, but it's just like cars. You start with the elites, but later, more and more people can afford it and use it, and we all become aware that we come from a planet, and there is no more discussion about if we should care about what happens on the other place, because we see we all come from a same place. And this is really important for us as a species to survive. We have to become aware that we come from a planet. So it's not just a joyride, it's important to educate our world, to do these kinds of things. But of course, there is a lot of science you can do. So let's move on to the other project that we're working on. It's called Blue Star. So you go back to the presentation. Felix, please. Next slide. I can do that myself, right? There you go. So since you are already out there, you might as well design a rocket to get to orbit. You know, as I said in the beginning, as you saw in the picture from the previous presentation, we send things to space like if it was the freaking end of the world, okay? We put something on the top of an intercontinental ballistic missile that is designed to destroy the world with nuclear weapons, and we send it. That is how we do it. And that is because we copy-paste what people here in Peenemünde did. And we have not dared to innovate since the 30s. We have just, used the same thing. But if you try to solve the problem with a clear mind, not copy-pasting, not like they taught you in school, but looking at the physics, looking at the fundamentals, you see that the problem to get to orbit or to get beyond to space can be broken down in 2. First, you get out, then you get fast. Okay? If you try to go fast when there is air, there is a problem. Air, now it doesn't look like there's a lot of drag, but put your hand out of the window when you are, speeding on the Autobahn. It's like honey. It stuck to you. But imagine going, Mach 30 or something like that. You can't do it. You need to be super pointy, and that is incredibly inefficient. There's lots of vibrations. Your satellites need to be, very rocked and everything. So we've decided to go for a gentler ride. We basically break the problem into getting out of the atmosphere with a balloon, and then you can design something that looks more like a lunar lander. It doesn't look like a rocket, because it doesn't have to be pointy and slender. And then you just send your satellite to orbit. You saw recently Jeff Bezos landed, the Amazon founder. He landed a stage, and SpaceX also from Elon Musk is trying to land a stage as well. It's a lot easier to land a stage if the design for the way up, if you're not designing for the way up, but you're designing for the way down. If the way up through the atmosphere is done by a balloon, then it's a lot easier to land something. You have a lot more control. It's almost like landing a multi-copter drone. So this is our patented solution, and we have over $240 million in a pipeline of clients to build this. And this is, by the way, fully private. This is not funded. I don't want to get into much detail, but as I said, the incentive structure of the funding mechanisms that we have in Europe is profoundly wrong. But anyway, there's still private individuals. We have German investors, Hong Kongese investors, Spanish investors, French, that go along for the ride. So if you can put the video of Blue Star to see how it works. This one is a computer graphic. We're working on this. The first launch is expected in 2018. Please, Felix. There you go. So we take off from a boat so that we don't harm anything, and we can abort the flight and descend back to the water. You don't want to be launching rockets around property or people that can get damaged. Also, the balloon matches the speed of the wind, so it's very easy to launch. So when you get to altitude, you drop it and immediately fire all the engines. The engines have less than 1/3 of the parts that conventional engines need to have. If you're launching from the ground, you need to carry turbo pumps, you need to carry a lot of subsystems that are not necessary once you're up there. Your satellite can be huge. It doesn't have to fit on the tip of a missile. Being larger means more surface for solar panels, better resolution if it has optics, more bandwidth if it has antennas. You know, we'll want to have all these connected devices, Internet of Things, and so on. And in cities, it's already taken care by LTE and 5G. But how about the rest of the world? We have to move from a smart city to a smart planet. And the only way to do that is from space. And having lots of little satellites that are cheap, that don't create space debris, and we can launch regularly. So that's the final stage, getting to orbit. So that's the name of this vehicle, Blue Star. So I think that's about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, José. That was really amazing. Can you tell us a bit about the commercial interest that companies have for the first prototype that you showed us? What exactly is it that they're looking for?
So some of the customers are confidential, but there's a lot of things that you want to test at a high altitude. For instance, if you have a satellite, you can test it on the ground, but you can also test it on the balloon or some parts of the satellite and see how they see the Earth or how they communicate. Also, if you want to develop reusable rockets, and there are some companies that want to develop large reusable stages, the most efficient way is to send them up on a balloon and drop them and simulate their re-entry. So those are examples. Of course, everybody here is probably familiar with Google Loon, which is the telecommunications design of Google to provide wireless connectivity through balloons. We don't work with that, but it's another example of the things that can be done with high-altitude balloons.
So I guess that the scene or the community of people who are able to come up with solutions like that is quite small. Are you interconnected with each other, with the other teams?
Well, it's a very small world. The space, the whole space transportation business is around $6 billion, which is like very, very small. A lot of VCs don't even look at it because it looks very small, but it's growing. It's growing.
And what was the highest altitude that you have been with your body?
I don't know. I haven't flown up yet on the system. We're doing a lot of testing unmanned for the moment. It wouldn't be very prudent to put humans already. It's coming. I don't know the highest I've been. I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 kilometers.
So one last question. How does one acquire the knowledge in order to come up with a prototype or with a solution like this for space traveling?
Well, in my case, it was very, very easy because my father is an astrophysicist, and I was lucky that he would explain things to me in real engineering terms, and I had the chance to speak to engineers and people like that since I was very little and try to understand how things really work in the world. So I mean, you have such an upbringing, it helps a lot. Of course, I've gone to work at Boeing, European Space Agency, studied at MIT, but that doesn't really explain because in those kind of places, unfortunately, you get very good education, but you also get a lot of, this is how things are done. And so you have to have a certain contradictory spirit to question those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, José.
Thank you.
Super nice.